The Wild West, a land of stark contrasts, where dreams were chased and destinies were forged on a wild and untamed frontier. From the echo of gunshots in dusty saloons to the quiet resilience of homesteaders, this iconic era continues to captivate our imaginations. Join us as we journey into the heart of this bygone era, unveiling rare and forgotten photos of the Wild West. Thomas Edward Ketchum, the Black Jack. In a haunting photograph, Thomas Edward Ketchum, better known as Black Jack, stands on the scaffold in Clayton, New Mexico, his gaze fixed and resolute as he faces his imminent execution. Born in 1863, Black Jack's notorious career as a train robber and outlaw came to a grim end on April 26, 1901, when he was sentenced to death by hanging for his crimes. The image captures the final moments of a man whose life was defined by a relentless pursuit of the thrill and the promise of easy money. A man who rose to infamy as one of the most feared and revered train robbers of his time. Standing at an imposing 6 feet tall and weighing a muscular 180 pounds, Black Jack cut a formidable figure, his reputation as a ruthless and cunning outlaw preceding him wherever he went. But in the end, even Black Jack could not outrun the long arm of the law. This final photograph of him was captured just moments before his sentence was carried out. Fate dealt a grim hand. The hanging was botched, and Black Jack was decapitated by the force of the drop, his gruesome end forever etched into the annals of Wild West history. Billy the Kid playing card game. In a rare and captivating photograph from 1877, the legendary outlaw and gunslinger Billy the Kid is captured in a moment of tense concentration, engaged in a high-stakes card game with members of his notorious gang. The image offers a fascinating glimpse into the world of the American Wild West, where danger and opportunity often went hand in hand. Billy, dressed in a crisp white shirt, dark vest, and a top hat, sits to the left of the table, his eyes fixed on the cards in his hand. His companions, equally focused on the game, keep their own cards close to their chests, their expressions a mix of determination and wariness. On the table between them, a nearly empty bottle of liquor hints at the long hours they've spent locked in this battle of wits and nerves. The photograph is a reminder that even the most notorious outlaws were, in many ways, ordinary men, seeking out moments of camaraderie and competition in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. At the same time, it's impossible to forget the violent legacy of Billy the Kid and his ilk, whose exploits have become the stuff of American legend, symbols of a time when the rule of law was often overshadowed by the rule of the gun. Main Street of the city of Manhattan. In the early 1900s, the bustling Main Street of Manhattan, Nevada, was a sight to behold. Founded in 1867 after the discovery of silver nearby, the city had experienced a surge of growth and prosperity that reached its peak in 1905, when gold was discovered in the surrounding hills. Virtually overnight, the population swelled to over 4,000, as fortune seekers from all walks of life poured into the area, dreaming of striking it rich. The photograph captures the energy and optimism of this era, with crowds of people thronging the street, going about their daily business. In the background, the sturdy wooden buildings that line the thoroughfare stand as enduring symbols of the determination and resilience of these early settlers, who had carved a thriving community out of the harsh and unforgiving landscape of the American West. Yet even as Manhattan prospered, the image also hints at the darker side of the gold rush era. The fervor for wealth and adventure that had drawn so many to places like Manhattan often came at a cost, with mining camps and boom towns notorious for their lawlessness, violence, and exploitation. In this sense, the photograph is a reminder of the complex legacy of the American West, a place where dreams of riches and freedom often collide with the harsh realities of frontier life. The Bloody Benders. In the early 1870s, the Bender family arrived in Labette County, Kansas, and quickly made a name for themselves as upstanding members of the community. Led by the charismatic Kate Bender, who claimed to be a psychic and spiritual healer, the family opened a small inn and tavern that became a popular gathering place for locals and travelers alike. But beneath the veneer of respectability, the Benders harbored a dark secret. Guests at the inn began to disappear without a trace, and rumors swirled about the family's involvement. It wasn't until a group of vigilantes, led by the brother of one of the missing men, began to investigate that the true extent of the Benders' crimes was revealed. The vigilantes discovered a grisly scene at the Bender property, a series of shallow graves containing the bodies of at least 11 victims, each of whom had been brutally murdered and stripped of their valuables. The Benders themselves were nowhere to be found, having fled the night they realized their crimes had been exposed. The story of the bloody Benders quickly became a national sensation, inspiring countless newspaper articles, books, and even a few Hollywood films. Some speculated that the family had been motivated solely by greed, while others suggested that they took a perverse pleasure in their crimes. But the truth about their motivations remains a mystery to this day. Despite an extensive manhunt, the Benders were never apprehended, and their ultimate fate remains unknown. Some claim to have spotted them in various parts of the country, while others insisted they had fled to Europe or even South America. Regardless of their fate, the bloody Benders left an indelible mark on the history of the Wild West, serving as a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked on the frontier. Fort Worth 5 photo, the Wild Bunch. In the annals of the Wild West, few images are as iconic as the Fort Worth 5 photograph. Taken in 1900, this stunning portrait captures 5 of the most notorious outlaws of the era: Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, Ben Kilpatrick, Will Carver, and Harvey Logan, also known as Kid Curry. With their cool, defiant gazes and elegant attire, these men exude an aura of mystery and danger that has captivated audiences for over a century. The story behind the photograph is as intriguing as the image itself. The Wild Bunch, as they were known, had gathered in Fort Worth, Texas, to celebrate a successful string of train and bank robberies. Feeling invincible, they decided to commemorate their exploits with a group portrait at a local studio. Little did they know that this seemingly innocuous act would ultimately lead to their downfall. When the photograph was displayed in the studio's window, it caught the eye of a passing lawman who recognized the wanted men. The Pinkerton Detective Agency was quickly notified, and copies of the photograph were distributed far and wide. Suddenly, the Wild Bunch found themselves the targets of one of the largest manhunts in American history. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement, the Wild Bunch managed to evade capture for several more years, pulling off ever more daring heists and cementing their status as Wild West legends. In the end, each member of the Wild Bunch met a violent end, either gunned down by lawmen or turning on each other in moments of betrayal and desperation. Femme fatale of the Wild West. The Wild West was a man's world, or so the popular imagination would have us believe, but the reality was far more complex, and women played a vital role in shaping the frontier's history and mythology. Among the most famous of these women were the femme fatale, the sharpshooters, outlaws, and adventurers who challenged the era's gender norms and carved out their own unique place in the annals of the West. Perhaps no woman embodied this archetype better than Annie Oakley, the legendary markswoman who rose to fame as a star attraction in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Born Phoebe Ann Mosey in Ohio in 1860, Oakley learned to shoot at a young age and quickly developed a reputation as a crack shot. In 1875, she met Frank Butler, a fellow sharpshooter who became her husband and manager, and together they joined Buffalo Bill's troupe, touring the country and wowing audiences with their incredible feats of marksmanship. But Oakley was more than just a talented performer. She was also a powerful symbol of women's empowerment and independence. At a time when most women were relegated to the domestic sphere, Oakley proved that a woman could be just as skilled and daring as any man, and her example inspired generations of women to pursue their own dreams and ambitions. Not all of the Wild West's femme fatales were as celebrated as Oakley, however. Take the case of Pearl Hart, a woman who turned to a life of crime in order to support herself and her family. In 1899, Hart and her boyfriend Joe Boot robbed a stagecoach in Arizona, making off with over $400 in cash and valuables. The heist made national headlines, and Hart became known as the Bandit Queen of the West, Seth Kinman and his extraordinary chairs. In the annals of American history, few figures loom as large as the mountain men and hunters of the Wild West, whose skills and exploits have become the stuff of legend. Among these legendary figures, Seth Kinman stands out as a true original, a man whose creativity and craftsmanship were as impressive as his prowess with a rifle. As a token of his esteem, Kinman decided to create a unique gift for President Andrew Johnson, whom he had the honor of meeting in person. Drawing on his deep knowledge of the natural world and his skills as a woodworker, Kinman set about crafting a chair that would be truly extraordinary. A one-of-a-kind piece that would reflect the rugged beauty and spirit of the American West. The result was a stunning creation, fashioned from elk horns and bearskin, that combined rustic charm with an almost regal sense of elegance. The chair's striking appearance showcased Kinman's artistry and ingenuity, a reflection of the resourcefulness and creativity that were so essential to survival on the frontier. It was a powerful symbol of the deep connection between the American people and the natural world, a connection that had shaped the nation's character and destiny from its earliest days. Best poker player in the Wild West. In the rough and tumble saloons of the Wild West, poker was more than just a game. It was a way of life. And no one embodied the spirit of the game better than Alice Ivers, a woman who became known as Poker Alice and went down in history as one of the greatest card players of her time. Born in England in 1853, Ivers moved to the United States as a young woman and quickly fell in love with the game of poker. She learned to play from her husband, a skilled gambler, and soon developed a reputation as a formidable player in her own right. After her husband's death, Ivers turned to poker as a means of supporting herself, and she quickly became one of the most feared and respected players on the frontier. What set Ivers apart from other players was her incredible skill at reading people and her ability to keep a cool head under pressure. She was known for her stoic demeanor at the table, rarely betraying any emotion or giving away any tells. But she was also famous for her flamboyant style, often dressing in elaborate gowns and jewelry that showcased her winnings. According to legend, Ivers once won over $250,000 in a single night of poker, a sum that would be worth millions of dollars today. She was also known for her quick wit and sharp tongue, often using humor and sarcasm to throw her opponents off their game. "Praise the Lord and place your bets," she was known to say, a catchphrase that became synonymous with her legend. Despite her success at the poker table, Ivers' life was not without its challenges. She was married 3 times and each of her husbands died under mysterious circumstances. Some suspected that Ivers herself may have had a hand in their deaths, a rumor that only added to her mystique and notoriety. Gold Rush, the arduous quest for fortune. In a captivating photograph from 1889, a group of miners toil tirelessly at a placer mining site in Rockerville, Dakota. Known as old-timers Spriggs, Lamb, and Dillon, these intrepid prospectors are captured laboring diligently with their equipment, using sluice boxes to separate the precious gold dust from the surrounding sediment. Placer mining, a method of extracting gold from alluvial deposits, was a common practice during this time, with men from all walks of life flocking to the goldfields in search of their fortunes. Armed with little more than their wits, their strength, and their dreams, these miners endured unimaginable hardships, braving the elements, disease, and the constant threat of violence in their quest for wealth and prosperity. Wild women of the Wild West. The Wild West was a place of opportunity and danger, where women defied conventional roles and carved out their own unique paths. From brave pioneers and savvy business owners to daring outlaws and entertaining saloon girls, these women left an indelible mark on the frontier. Contrary to popular belief, saloon girls were not merely pretty faces or objects of male desire. Many were well-educated, cultured women who saw the job as a means to make an honest living in a world where opportunities were scarce. They were hired for their artistic talents, such as singing, dancing, and engaging in witty conversation, and patrons were expected to treat them with respect. In a time when men vastly outnumbered women in most Western towns, the presence of saloon girls was a major draw. They brought a touch of refinement and entertainment to the rough and tumble frontier, and their company was highly sought after. The Widowmaker. In the late 19th century, the small town of Del Mar, Nevada, seemed like a beacon of opportunity in the heart of gold country. Boasting a population of 1,500, the town had all the trappings of a thriving community, from bustling businesses to its own hospital and school. But the arrival of a new gold refinery in 1893 would soon unleash a silent killer that earned the town a grim nickname, the Widowmaker. The refinery belched out clouds of silicon dust, a toxic byproduct of the gold extraction process that slowly poisoned the lungs of miners and townspeople alike. As the years passed, more and more men fell victim to the deadly dust, leaving behind a growing number of widows and fatherless children. At the height of the tragedy, Delmar was home to some 400 widows. It took 16 years for the refinery to finally close its doors, but by then, the damage was done. The once thriving town began to wither away as the widows and their families sought a better life elsewhere. By 1934, Delmar was a ghost town, a haunting reminder of the human cost of progress and the importance of safeguarding public health in the face of industrial growth. Apache spirit dancers, guardians of tradition and healing. For centuries, the Apache people of the American Southwest have maintained a rich and vibrant spiritual tradition, one that is deeply rooted in the natural world and the cycles of life and death. At the heart of this tradition are the Apache spirit dancers, men and women who serve as healers, storytellers, and guardians of the tribe's cultural heritage. In a rare and stunning photograph from the late 19th century, we see a group of these spirit dancers, their faces obscured by elaborate headdresses and masks. The image is a haunting reminder of the power and mystery of the Apache spiritual world, a world that has endured despite centuries of outside pressure and cultural upheaval. The role of the spirit dancer in Apache society is complex and multifaceted. On one level, they were healers, using their knowledge of traditional medicine and spiritual practices to treat the sick and injured. They were also storytellers, passing down the tribe's oral histories and cultural traditions from one generation to the next. Stagecoaches of the West. In the Wild West, stagecoaches were more than just a means of transportation. They were a lifeline connecting remote towns and settlements to the rest of the country. Among the most famous of these was the Deadwood stagecoach, renowned for its safety and security in a time when highway robbery was a constant threat. What set the Deadwood stagecoach apart was the precious cargo it often carried, from mail and gold to other valuables that made it an irresistible target for outlaws and bandits. In response, the stagecoach operators employed a team of brave and skilled men to defend the vehicle and its passengers at all costs. These men, armed to the teeth and trained in the art of frontier combat, became the stuff of legend, their exploits celebrated in books, songs, and tall tales. For the passengers who braved the journey, riding in the Deadwood stagecoach was an experience like no other. Jostled and jolted over rough, unpaved roads, they put their trust in the skill and courage of the men who guarded them, knowing that at any moment, a band of desperados might appear on the horizon, guns blazing. It was a time of danger and adventure, when the line between life and death was often as thin as a hair trigger, and the only certainty was the knowledge that the Deadwood stagecoach would always get through, no matter the odds. Buffalo skulls and the near extinction of the bison. In a haunting photograph from 1892, two men posed beside a massive pile of buffalo skulls in the American state of Michigan, a chilling reminder of the devastating toll taken on one of the continent's most majestic creatures. For centuries, the bison had roamed the Great Plains in vast herds numbering up to 60 million, their presence woven into the very fabric of the land and the lives of the indigenous peoples who called it home. To the Native American tribes of the plains, the bison was more than just a source of food, clothing, and shelter. It was a sacred and spiritual symbol, a cornerstone of their culture and way of life. But with the westward expansion of the 19th century, all of that changed. Hunted to the brink of extinction by settlers, soldiers, and commercial hunters, the once mighty herds were reduced to a few scattered remnants, their bones littering the prairie in mute testimony to the savagery of the slaughter. Today, the bison is making a comeback, thanks to the efforts of conservationists and Native American tribes who have fought to restore this keystone species to its rightful place on the plains. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. This was considered normal in the Wild West. In the late 1800s Wild West, it was rumored that a peculiar New Year's Eve tradition existed. Women kneeling before their husbands after dinner on December 31st to seek forgiveness. A photograph from that era seemingly depicts this, showing 5 women kneeling before men. However, historians assert that no such tradition existed. deeming it a hoax. The 19th century was a time of rigid gender roles, but the idea of an annual ritual of female subservience seems far-fetched and inconsistent with the known dynamics of frontier life. What do you think of this? Let us know in the comments. James Miller, the killer for hire. In the Wild West, where life was cheap and justice often came at the barrel of a gun, few figures were more feared or reviled than James Miller, the notorious assassin who plied his deadly trade with chilling efficiency. Known as Killin' Jim to those who whispered his name in the saloons and brothels of the frontier, Miller was a man who killed for money, his services as a hired gun available to anyone with enough cash and a grudge to settle. The price of Miller's services varied from as little as $150 for a quick and dirty job to as much as $2,000 for a high-profile target. Regardless of the fee, Miller approached each kill with the same cold-blooded professionalism, stalking his prey under cover of darkness, his black coat blending seamlessly into the shadows. By the time his victim saw him coming, it was already too late. Over the course of his bloody career, Miller is believed to have killed at least a dozen men, his name becoming synonymous with death and terror throughout the West. But even a killer as ruthless as Miller couldn't outrun justice forever. In the end, it was an angry mob, not a lawman's bullet, that brought him down, his body left swinging from makeshift gallows as a warning to all those who would follow in his murderous footsteps. Buffalo Bill Cody, the icon of the Wild West. Few figures embody the spirit of the Wild West quite like Buffalo Bill Cody, the legendary frontiersman, showman, and icon whose name has become synonymous with the romance and adventure of the American frontier. In a classic photograph from the era, Cody is captured in all his rugged glory, a rifle with antlers, his eyes blazing with the fire of a man who has seen and done things that most can only imagine. Born in Iowa in 1846, Cody's early life was marked by tragedy and hardship, with his father's death and his own stint as a Pony Express rider, shaping him into the man he would become. But it was as a scout and buffalo hunter that Cody truly made his mark, his skill with a rifle and his unmatched knowledge of the plains earning him a reputation as one of the greatest marksmen and hunters of his time. In later years, Cody would go on to create his famous Wild West show, a traveling circus of sorts that brought the romance and adventure of the frontier to audiences around the world. With its daring feats of horsemanship, sharpshooting exhibitions, and reenactments of famous battles and events, the show became an international sensation, cementing Cody's status as the living embodiment of the Wild West in the popular imagination. Native American attire, a reflection of rich heritage. In a striking photograph from the era of the Wild West, a group of Native American warriors from various tribes stand together, their traditional attire serving as a powerful symbol of the rich cultural heritage and diversity of the indigenous peoples of the American frontier. From the intricately woven blankets to the elaborate headdresses and ceremonial garments, each element of their clothing tells a story, a reflection of the deep spiritual and cultural traditions that sustain these communities through times of unimaginable hardship and change. For the Native American tribes of the West, clothing was more than just a means of protection against the elements. It was a form of self-expression, a way of asserting their identity and their connection to the natural world around them. The materials used in their garments, from the hides of buffalo and deer to the quills of porcupines and the shells of freshwater mussels, were imbued with deep symbolic meaning, each one carefully chosen and crafted to reflect the wearer's status, clan affiliation, and spiritual beliefs. Village of the Wild West. In a striking photograph from the late 19th century, the essence of a Native American Pueblo village in the American Southwest is captured in all its stark beauty and rich cultural significance. The adobe structures, unique to this region and emblematic of the architectural ingenuity of the Native American tribes who inhabited it, rise up from the barren landscape like sentinels of a bygone era, their earthen walls standing strong against the ravages of time and the elements. For the communities that called these villages home, life was a constant struggle against the harsh realities of the frontier. a daily battle for survival in the face of disease, hunger, and the ever-present threat of violence from the encroaching forces of colonization. Yet despite these challenges, the Pueblo villages endured, their inhabitants drawing strength from the deep spiritual and cultural traditions that had sustained them for generations. Geronimo, the Apache leader's fierce resistance. Born Goya Way, Geronimo emerged as a prominent Apache leader and medicine man, fiercely resisting Mexican and American forces in the late 19th century. His life was marred by tragedy, with the loss of his family at the hands of Mexican soldiers, fueling his unwavering determination to protect his people and their way of life. Geronimo's tactical brilliance and bravery in battle made him a formidable adversary, as he and his followers evaded capture for years, leveraging their intimate knowledge of the terrain to outmaneuver the U.S. Army. His leadership and cunning inspired his people, as he fought tirelessly to preserve Apache culture and sovereignty in the face of relentless encroachment by foreign powers. In 1886, after a prolonged pursuit, Geronimo finally surrendered to U.S. authorities, spending the last 2 decades of his life as a prisoner of war. Despite his captivity, Geronimo's legacy endured, his name becoming synonymous with Native American resistance and resilience. His life and struggles serve as a poignant reminder of the immense challenges faced by indigenous communities during the colonization of the American West, and the indomitable spirit that sustained them in the face of overwhelming odds. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.